Hello, my name is Dr. Sarah Walker, and I'm honored to serve as the 2025 President of the El Paso County Medical Society. On behalf of our organization, I want to welcome you and thank you for tuning in to the El Paso Physician. For the past 28 years, the El Paso Physician has been dedicated to serving our community, and we are grateful for the continued opportunity to bring this program to you on PBS El Paso. This would not be possible without the generous support of our community sponsors who help us produce valuable content every month. If you or someone you know is interested in supporting this program, more information is available at 915-533-0940 or at epmedsoc@aol.com. Thank you again, and we hope you enjoy this program presented by the El Paso County Medical Society and hosted by Kathrin Berg.
Life support can take on many forms. Today we're going to talk specifically about ECMO, or extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It acts like an artificial lung and sometimes like an artificial heart, giving the body some life-saving time to recover. This program is called the first ECMO program in the region and is underwritten by University Medical Center. And I also want to say thank you to the El Paso County Medical Society for bringing this program to you for 29 years. I'm Kathrin Berg, and this is the El Paso Physician.
Neither the El Paso County Medical Society, its members, nor PBS El Paso shall be responsible for the views, opinions, or facts expressed by the panelists on this television program. Please consult your doctor.
Thanks again for joining us. Today we are going to be talking about the first ECMO program in the region, and we'll describe exactly what that means. It's fascinating. The team behind the UMC's Advanced Life Support. So with us this evening, we have two veterans and a new person, which I kind of think is fun because we're describing how we usually run the show, and I say that we try to keep it lighthearted, keep the energy high, but there's all kinds of questions I want to ask personally this evening. But we have Dr. Leo Mercer with us, and he is UMC Associate Trauma Medical Director. He's also the Texas Tech Health El Paso Associate Professor of Surgery and the Medical Director of ECMO Services. That's a lot. And we're going to come back to you in a minute and have you explain what all that means. We also have Dr. Tiffany Lasky, and she is UMC Pediatric and Associate Adult Trauma Medical Director, also Texas Tech Health El Paso Professor of Surgery. And we have Ivan P. Garza, who is the UMC ECMO Program Director. And I'm looking for all kinds of stories from you. I know I came in heavy saying that because I think sometimes when we understand what it is that ECMO is doing, it helps people grasp onto what it is. It's new, but very, very cool. So on that note, Dr. Mercer, as our veteran on the panel and as kind of the boss of the group, so to speak, describe what it is that you do. I know that you were talking earlier that you're trying to split the roles of the Associate Professor of Surgery, but also Medical Director of ECMO Services. Where does that play into what we're talking about this evening?
Yeah, I think that the roles that we play at Texas Tech and UMC are complementary, obviously. And when the subject of starting an ECMO program came up, right after I first got back here in September of 23, it became clear that we were the largest region in the country, the largest metropolitan area in the country, serving the largest group of people in a geographic area, not to have an ECMO program. That was something that many of us felt compelled to create, if you will.
And I'm going to repeat it even though I did it in the opening statement because the acronym ECMO, and we're going to use it throughout the evening, but ECMO again stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. So before we keep going, explain to the audience what that means so that when we do mention ECMO throughout the evening, they'll know.
Well, in patients that have diseases involving the lungs and their lungs have failed, adult respiratory distress syndrome, pulmonary emboli, injuries, pulmonary contusions, and you simply cannot oxygenate them or ventilate them using conventional ventilators without further damaging the lungs. That's when ECMO begins to play a role. Now, what that does is take blood, in the case of VV or veno-venous ECMO, takes blood out of the venous side and runs it through a pump and a filter, oxygenates the blood, and puts it back in. So what we can do is we can allow the lung to rest by no longer exposing it to high pressures on the ventilator, and yields really very good results in terms of dealing with patients with those conditions.
Okay, nicely explained. I like that. Dr. Lasky, let's talk about your role. So technically your role is UMC Pediatric and Associate Adult Trauma Medical Director, also Professor of Surgery. So in this night's discussion, because again, you guys do so many things, but bringing it back to ECMO, how would you describe your role with ECMO? This is what we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, I'm one of the ECMO physicians. I'm a surgical intensivist. We help with cannulation, and we also manage the patients that are on the circuit that are critically ill on the surgery service. And, you know, we can talk about this more later with Dr. Mercer or someone too, and Ivan can help explain as well, the uniqueness of our model, because our surgeons know a lot more than a lot of other cannulators or
describe what a cannulator is.
They're the size of a garden hose.
Okay.
They go into people's arteries and veins.
Okay. The size of a garden hose.
And even as someone who's done surgery for 20 years, it can be a little scary. But this is something that we need to do to accomplish the flows that we need to do what Dr. Mercer's describing. So we definitely have had some scary moments.
But learning moments too, and that's something too. And I'll bring this up quickly. We were talking prior to the program that ECMO has been part of El Paso since January 31st, 2025. So we're about a year and a half in, not quite a year and a half in. And I'm looking forward again to stories because as with everything, you learn as you go. So that's going to be kind of interesting.
We put the cannulas in, but we also manage the patient. And we know a lot about the pump as surgeons. And I think that's different than a lot of places.
Okay. And I love bragging about El Paso. So when we get to that point, let's talk about other programs around the country and why we are different that way. Ivan, I would love to talk with you about being the program director. First of all, how did you get that position, right? Because again, this is relatively new in El Paso. Are you from El Paso? Describe a little bit about yourself so the audience can kind of go, oh, that's Ivan.
So I'm actually from near San Antonio, Texas. Okay. And most of my ECMO experience comes from working in that region. But working in that region, I've also been part of teams that have had to come to El Paso and pick patients up and take them back to San Antonio and care for them there. So I knew there was a definite disparity in, having patients displaced from families and such. And when I had the opportunity to apply for a job where we can develop a program in a place that really needed a program, it was very hard for me not to apply.
I like the way you said that. Sorry, do you like El Paso so far?
I love El Paso.
Okay. We usually talk about people who are relatively new. If you're in El Paso and you ask people where you went to high school, but if you're a transplant, we have to ask you what your favorite Mexican food restaurant is. We'll ask you toward the end of the program. Think of a good one, though. Dr. Mercer, so as I was talking about earlier, this first year and a half, with UMC, and I want to talk about this too, as you made a point of it earlier, it's UMC in partnership with Texas Tech Health El Paso.
Correct.
So talk about that partnership and how that works with the ECMO system.
It's a working relationship that reflects in large part the integration of Texas Tech Health El Paso and UMC. We've been partners for a long time. I initially came to El Paso to finish my last 2 years of medical school in 1978 and spent 20 years here thereafter. Working as training and being a trauma fellow and then joining the trauma and acute care surgery service until I left in 97 and moved to New Zealand. So while familiar with the organization either good or bad remembers me. But so that relationship was something that we built upon. Dr. Lasky is a surgical intensivist, as am I. We have two pulmonary critical care physicians. That is what we started the program with. We've now expanded to one more surgical intensivist who cannulates and manages ECMO patients, and one more pulmonary critical care specialist. So we have a total of 6. Those people are all on faculty at Texas Tech Health El Paso. Working with UMC, helping in the training of the staff, the ECMO specialists, working with Ivan in terms of laying out the acquisitions, if you will, the capital for starting this program, and setting up the training, the education, the competencies, the policies, the procedures, all of the things that we have to do in order to stand up a program that is both life-saving and associated with high risk. And that's just kind of the nature of ECMO. People don't hit ECMO on a winning streak. Right. You don't wander into the ICU and go, well, I'm feeling really pretty good. I think I'll go on an ECMO circuit. So all of that is within a framework of policies, procedures, and education, maintaining competency, and all those sorts of things that it takes to stand up a program like that.
So Dr. Lasky, I think that was a great transition when you were talking about an ECMO circuit. I would love, if you could, and maybe we can show a photograph too, or an image of this or two, but can you describe what the ECMO circuit looks like and what it is doing? You talked about garden hose earlier, and I just love the fact that you are a descriptive person, and I appreciate that very much, of what exactly is happening during the circuit of ECMO, so to speak.
So like Dr. Mercer said, these patients are incredibly critical, on the brink of death, and they need oxygen desperately. So the cannulas, we deal with VV and VA, veno-venous, 2 veins, or veno-arterial, a vein and artery.
Okay.
And the simplest way to describe it is blood comes out through a big hose, and it goes through an oxygenator. And then it goes back into the body. And you can literally see a difference from the blood that comes out. Yeah. And then the blood that comes from the oxygenator and goes in the body is bright red. It's incredible. And I knew it was a cool thing, but until we started doing it, I didn't really grasp the power of it.
So when a patient is on an ECMO circuit, and you said this is like dire, is there an average number of hours, days that this occurs? And is this, her smiles teaching me like, oh, is that a hard question to ask?
Well,
Maybe harder to answer.
We have people on for 3 to 5 days, right? That's our average, but it could be less, it could be more. And there are times when it can be a lot longer.
Okay. So here's the prequel to that question. When they're in dire straits, what is it that, and in between the two of you, let me know, when is it that, okay, we need to put this person on the ECMO circuit, and if we didn't have the ECMO circuit, would they simply not make it? And I'm going to start with you, and Dr. Mercer, if you want to throw in some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, we've had many patients who were on the brink of death before they went on to the circuit.
Right.
And we weren't really sure at the time if they were going to make it.
And what conditions get them to that point?
It could
would it be heart attacks? Would it be trauma?
All of the above.
Okay.
Massive intoxications from different medications, or we even had a patient with carbon monoxide poisoning that we put on circuit. But there are also times when the lungs are failing, like Dr. Mercer mentioned earlier. And that could be from aspiration or some other event.
Okay. Dr. Mercer?
There's a really very good picture of our first cannulation. And in the background, you can see the ventilator and you can see the monitor. And the patient went on the circuit, our very first, with a heart rate of around 140, 150, with an O2 saturation of about 65 to 70. And you can see the pressure on the ventilator, the pressure required to ventilate that patient. We're going into the 40, 45 range, just high pressure in order to keep the patient as oxygenated as we could, which really wasn't very high. Normal oxygenation will tolerate somewhere at 88 to 90% oxygenated blood. This patient was 70 when we actually cannulated.
So going back to that question, it's always nice to picture what is it that got that patient there, or some ideas of what that could be.
It was a patient who aspirated.
Okay.
Who had was in the ICU, had pulled his own NG nasogastric tube out that was emptying his stomach and subsequently aspirated and caused a massive aspiration. And when that happens, the acid in the stomach secretions wreak havoc on the pulmonary system. So this was a patient that, had we not cannulated, would not have survived. And we see that multiple times. Likewise with ECPR, which is ECMO CPR, where patients' hearts stop. I mean, they're fortunate enough to have effective CPR for a period of time, and we can go in and rather quickly cannulate them for, in this case, VA, the arterial ECMO, to support the heart.
So describe how an ECMO CPR would occur. Like, what if I am watching a movie and you're describing this to me, what would that description look like?
The first patient that we put on an ECPR circuit, on a VA circuit, and Ivan remembers it well, was a patient that was being transferred to us, having a toxic ingestion. In this case, he'd been drinking gasoline, and we'd accepted him in transfer from one of the other hospitals in town. And 5 minutes out from our emergency department, the patient arrested. So paramedics, EMTs, pre-hospital care from El Paso Fire started what is definably effective CPR. Patient came to the ER. We put a device on called a Lucas device, which delivers predictable, sustainable CPR in those patients through a mechanical means, and cannulated the patient and put him on VA ECMO.
Okay.
And our average time to get somebody cannulated in that circumstance is about 6 to 8 minutes.
6 to 8 minutes, that's it. Okay. You know, Ivan, this was a nice way of bringing you into the picture too. So this evening, let's talk about this patient this evening. Is this your first encounter with ECMO, or is it just something that you may remember because of the unique circumstance of drinking gasoline? Goodness gracious. Describe what that was like on your end.
So definitely not my first encounter with ECMO, but it was a very unique case and a very young patient too. So it was definitely something that will stick with me.
Give me an age on young. Help me out.
I would say mid-20s.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but when we put him on, just like Dr. Mercer said, he was on the Lucas device, which is a mechanical means of CPR. And when you get a patient on VA ECMO, you're able to essentially take over the work of the heart and allow that heart to rest, recover, maybe go for some type of definitive treatment. And once we had him on the VA circuit, we had a sustainable blood pressure. His oxygen was a little bit better, and we were able to get him to the ICU and continue, intensive care.
And I'm still trying to picture this, and maybe I'm a knucklehead. I'm not able to picture it. So you're talking about it's CPR, mechanical CPR, but in this circuit itself, and I know we'll have an image when this airs, but describe to me what that looks like externally going into the bottom. And Dr. Lassie, if you want to help out with that, describe the way that would work physiologically in the body. Again, you're trying to help the lungs, help the heart at the same time. How is that working in tandem?
So you're drawing out the blood, bring it into the oxygenator, right? Filling it full of oxygen and putting it back in.
And so is there actual physical pumping of the heart at that time? Or is it the blood system that's causing the heart to pump because there's pressure going back into the heart?
You're putting it back into the artery. If the heart fails, you actually don't have to push on the heart and do CPR anymore. That's how well it supports perfusion to the organs.
Think for a moment about what's described wrongly as open heart surgery, but those patients are on a perfusion device and the heart is being bypassed.
Okay.
So the heart's in asystole or standstill so that they can do surgery on the heart. And then they restart it at the end of it and after decannulating. Those are runs that probably last 3 to 4 hours. And then the patient's surgery is done. They can be decannulated in the OR and the heart starts, and life goes on. In this circumstance, the heart is in standstill that we're actually pushing blood into the arterial system through our ECMO circuit.
And this can be happening as surgery is going on.
Well, in the case of perfusion, and Ivan is also a perfusionist, so he can expand on that. So, but the idea behind perfusion in heart surgery is that you can operate on a quiet heart that's not moving, that can do all the anastomosis or the connections that one has to undergo.
Because the blood is oxygenating the body.
It's oxygenating externally.
Interesting.
And that's essentially what we're doing, but we typically can run them for a lot longer. So patient on a VA circuit until the heart recovers could mean being on a circuit for 3, 5, 7, 10 days until that heart has recovered. But that is kind of the analogy. And a lot of ECMO came about from that perfusion world in open heart surgery, and then came out of that with perhaps more effective pumps that could be used that didn't disrupt blood cells and things of that nature. It became a little more atraumatic circuits that were specifically designed for long-term ECMO, be it BV or VA. So
okay.
But yeah, imagine that you stop the heart in surgery. Right. Well, the heart stopped because he drank gasoline and had all the metabolic consequences of drinking gasoline, and his heart stopped. At the time that we got him, his heart had stopped, and the only way we were getting native heart function was to push on it. And what we do with VA ECMO is take over that function, where we pull blood out of the venous side, run it through a pump, through an oxygenator, and inject it back into the arterial side so that it effectively diminishes the role of the heart.
So here's the question. When you said a little bit earlier that so this could be several days, 7, 8, 9 days, and in that time frame, the heart is recovering. So it's doing the work of the heart. And this is just where science and medicine is fantastic. So just the body is starting to not heal the heart, but for the lack of a better word, you said recover. How is that, if you can describe what that means? Because again, you're letting the heart rest for these many days because an exterior device is doing the blood pumping for you. Again, lungs.
And that's also, pumping is a bit of a misnomer. We don't use pulsatile flow in ECMO, at least in this country. It's available in Europe. It's essentially the same pump that we use, but it's not approved in the U.S. So we're supplying arterial oxygenated blood to the rest of the body and non-pulsatile flow. But essentially what we're doing is allowing the heart to recover, or we're correcting the metabolic abnormalities that cause the heart to stop in the first place.
Okay.
In the case of monoxide poisoning, which was one of our cases, it was the patient came in with a very low ejection fraction. Percentage of blood that was coming out of his heart was almost immeasurable, 5 to 10% ejection fraction. And what Dr. Lasky and Ivan did was put them on a VA circuit, support them until they could off-gas the monoxide.
And when that means just after a while, it just leaves the system.
Right, correct.
Because we're able to pump through the system. Okay.
There's a lot that goes into monoxide toxicity. It's not just hemoglobin loading and unloading. It's some other things that happen at the cellular level. But if you can keep patients alive long enough for the body to effectively uncouple the monoxide from the cytochromes, getting it off the hemoglobin is really not that big of an issue. But supporting that patient so you could have recovery of the heart long enough for them to deal with the consequences of monoxide toxicity. That's what we're looking for. This is not a definitive treatment. It's not like you leave the hospital with a couple of cannulas dangling from your left groin, but it's designed to support cardiac function and lung function so that the body can heal, or we can implement different interventions, different therapies that resolve what caused the heart function to fail.
Okay. That's starting to make a lot more sense to me. Ivan, I want to go back to you because we were talking about a profusionist, which is hard for me to say. So that is something you do, that's something you are. Describe what that is. And I think that for the most part, we kind of have the gist. But before ECMO came along, let's talk about that.
So a perfusionist is a healthcare provider that manages the heart-lung bypass machine in the OR.
Okay.
They do other things on top of that. So I'm not a perfusionist. I've worked as a perfusion assistant, but it's very close to what an ECMO specialist or ECMO primer is as well, because the two fields are so close together. You're able to know the ins and outs of the machinery that you're taking care of the patient that the patient's on. And a lot of times perfusion groups will use ECMO specialists as perfusion assistants to help them get their machines ready and actually help them run cases under the direction, while they're doing open heart surgery. But as far as ECMO is concerned and the machinery, so we think of ECMO and we think of a machine that has a pump and an oxygenator, some big tubing, some big cannulas. But I would say that ECMO is a little bit more than just a machine. It's also the team that's involved with it, right? You have nurses and respiratory therapists that are trained as ECMO specialists. They have to have critical care experience to even be eligible to become an ECMO specialist. And then you have physicians as well that go through the same training so that, in essence, everybody on the team is interchangeable as an ECMO specialist. And you have, your leadership group as well that's able to support the program. So when I think ECMO, I think more than, like I said, more than a machine, but the whole system.
Okay. And I'm going to repeat this again just for people who may just be turning in. I know we're saying ECMO a lot, but what ECMO means is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, just so it kind of ticks in a little bit more. And you were talking about training. And so I'd imagine that the amount of training that this requires, it's a team. And I love what you talked, there's a lot of cross-training happening. How did you go through your training? What does the training provide everybody?
So the first portion of training is a didactic portion where we teach some physiology and some advanced critical care science to the people that want to become ECMO specialists. And then we also have the technical aspect of teaching the machine itself, how to deal with scenarios that might include, troubleshooting something that's regular, like a small clot in the system, to something that's a little bit, that's something that can be even bigger, like a clot that stops the system, or a break in the system where the blood starts to come out of, and they have to recognize these and trend these patterns so that they can catch these events before they become a big issue. Because while the patient's on ECMO, essentially you are their life support. And if you allow the system to stop, they may not make it.
So when we're talking about the cross-training, so when you started this, and I'm trying to think of what the unit looks like now. And for example, we had a cardiology program a couple of months ago, and what the pacemaker looked like then compared to what it looks like now. And I'm just trying to think of what the ECMO looks like now. What did it look like a little bit before? And how do you see it being in the future? And I know that's a lot to kind of put together. But again, I'm trying to think of, when did ECMO start around the world? I know you said that there's a lot of approval that needs to be done in the United States. There's a lot of stuff that's happening in Europe. And Dr. Mercer, feel free to go in on this. But what does the ECMO machine look like now compared to when it first arrived?
Right. When ECMO first was implemented, the machine itself was probably about as big as a spinet piano.
Oh, wow.
So it's a pretty large machine. Maybe around 20 years ago, you started to see more machines that were based off the perfusion-based machine, and it might be the size of a portable keyboard, so that it can sit in front, like a lap keyboard. And then today you're going to see machines that might be as big as a stack of books, so maybe a little taller, but
okay.
yeah.
Say if that's on the camera, I'm not sure if those are on the camera, but there you go. Okay, about
Right.
this. Okay.
Right.
All right.
So much more portable.
Okay.
And with that, of course, there's more room in the patient's room, that you have available to you, but also with portability comes the ability to move patients. So these patients that were on the brink of death, some of them are on ECMO, and you're able to wake them up and walk with them. And
while they're on the machine.
Right.
Okay. So talk about, we talked about earlier, so there's Europe. There's some things that they're allowed to do in Europe that we don't do yet. I like using the word yet, but go ahead.
Yeah, and Ivan's given a really good representation of kind of where we came from in this world of corporeal life support, or ECLS as it's described, from large machines that would occupy something that looked like this bureau over here, and different types of oxygenators, bubble oxygenators, where you actually kind of just bubble the oxygen into the blood and then recirculate it that way, to changes in technology and membranes that allow us to oxygenate the blood, and a canister that is about this big around and maybe that long, to oxygenators now that the newer oxygenators are flat, about that thick, that do the same thing. So, and having pumps that are centrifugal pumps, some of which are offset and spin at a high rate of speed, but are so precise that as they pump blood through the oxygenator and ultimately into the patient, do very little damage or less damage to the patient's blood components, like red cells and platelets and things that the larger perfusion type devices were capable of doing. That allowed us to keep people on a circuit, whether VA or BB circuit, for longer. I mean, for the most part, nobody aspires to keep a patient on a heart-lung machine for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours. That's where ECMO comes in. We can effectively do the same thing for a longer period of time using our hardware. That's evolved over time. Now we're starting to look at devices that I would describe as home ECMO, where you really have a patient who just needs oxygen, maybe a COPD that's retaining CO2, and our oxygenators are very good about loading oxygen and unloading CO2. We're not quite there yet.
So that's a great case. So with someone with COPD, because that's not going to go away, is this something that they come in and do every, like you said, it's a life support system. Is it something that they repeat every couple of weeks, every couple of months?
No, I think it's something that as we get smaller and smaller cannulas that we can place in smaller vessels, on the VV side, I've seen devices in development now that don't require a big pump component, don't require a big oxygenator component, because the oxygenators have become far more efficient, and the pumps have become far more effective with smaller size. So yeah, there are things on the horizon, but this has been an evolution over the years. If you look at the first ECMO patient put on an ECMO circuit at the University of Michigan, it filled the room. So
give me an approximate year of when that was.
1970s.
Oh, wow.
Then
Okay.
72, I think.
Okay.
So, I mean, it literally filled the whole room. In addition to all the what we would describe now as archaic sort of support systems in an ICU in 1972, big ventilators, infusion pumps were probably largely non-existent then. So
Right.
you had bags and bottles of fluid hanging around, and you had this big this big perfusion oxygenator in the background trying to keep the patient alive.
So I don't know if you all know this, but we have an iron lung upstairs in this building. So the building where we film this program is the Paso County Medical Society's home. It's a building. It's a TROS building, but we have a medical museum,
and
so
it
to speak, up
probably
there.
came from R.H. Allison Hospital.
I believe it did. I believe
and I
it did.
probably took care of the patient on it.
Yeah. And I think we have a photo of that. That'd be great to insert here too. So let me go back to Ivan for a moment. So you've been here. Have you been here since January of last year?
I've been here since
Prior to that?
April of 24.
Okay. And in that time, is it all in prep for the ECMO system that is now in El Paso and in places? Okay, so here's another question, and it's a money question. It's an awful question, but we have one now. Do we see, because it is portable, people coming in from other areas of the country, Texas? I don't know where the closest ECMO machine is other than El Paso, and I'm just throwing that out to anybody who might know. Is that
Albuquerque?
Lubbock? Albuquerque.
Well, actually, that's
Not counting
that's not true.
Juarez.
Not counting Chihuahua City, which is by land miles. That's the closest ECMO capable service. But ours is Albuquerque, and then following that Tucson. But we cover 140,000 square mile
Okay, that was my
piece
question.
of West
Okay.
Texas and eastern and New Mexico. So 1.4 million, 1.5 million people in that area. So yes, people come in from, we've taken patients from as far east of us as Midland, Odessa, and as far west as just south of Albuquerque. But again, that mirrors kind of our service area for the trauma program. We've taken patients from local El Paso community or hospitals. We've taken patients from hospitals in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And that has been when Mr. Centrone, Jacob, tasked us with setting up an ECMO program. It was not just for UMC, it was for the region, because we're in this very large geographic island, if you will, in far west Texas, and were we not to do that, the fact that it hadn't been done, it simply would not have happened without that leadership and that guidance and that commitment to creating a village, as Ivan described, because it truly does take a village to set up an ECMO program.
So let's go back to, yes.
It's the pinnacle of what something like a level 1 trauma center or a stroke center or any kind of hospital
And I'm
at our
glad you
level
threw that in there. So let's talk
achieve.
about that.
And
yeah.
it takes a lot of infrastructure, and it's incredibly resource intensive.
Mhm.
But like
And so
you
that being
mentioned,
said,
also
too,
costly.
Yeah, the UMC is the only level 1 trauma center in the region as well. And poor Ivan, I keep trying to get questions to you. So with this now, and I would love for you to talk about a time where a patient, so again, the idea was about 12 patients were going to be served in the first year, and there were over 30 patients served in that first year. So that's a lot, and that just what the need is fantastic. So think about when you have had a patient come in from somewhere else. Where was that from? And again, it's stories, right? Like, what is it that caused them to need the ECMO machine? We brought them here to El Paso, brought them to UNC, again, in partnership with Texas Tech Health. Talk about one of those, or two or three of those case studies that might come to mind.
Well, so even before we started the program, they approximated that you'd probably get the program running within a year of me starting the development phase. Maybe about 3 months into it, we had a patient that needed ECMO. Of course, we didn't have an up and running program yet, but we were able to identify this patient and send him out to San Antonio. And when he got better, they sent him back, and he was able to continue his care here. And it just kind of lit a fire. I didn't think I can sit around for a full year and not have a running program. So maybe another 3 months after that, we put our first patient on. In fact, we weren't slated to start the program till the day after. We were going to start the program on February the 1st, and it just so happened that a patient needed the service, and I got the call from Dr. Mercer saying, "Hey, there's someone that looks like they might be a great candidate, but he may not make it till tomorrow."
Well, we did what I described as a soft opening.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, if it's needed,
for
and that's
our
what's so
ECMO program.
beautiful about it. Yeah.
And Ivan is Ivan stood this program up in 8.5 months. So Ivan got here March, April.
You overachiever.
And January 31st put our first patient on ECMO. And I think that Ivan recognized the need, all of us recognize the need. Certainly, Dick Army Medical Center provided a service for which we're grateful. Unfortunately, because most of our patients are civilian, they had to request for ECMO made to BAMC's ECMO program was associated with a request to the Pentagon to secure permission and to secure an aircraft that could fly their crew out, put the patient, cannulate the patient here, put the patient back on the plane, send them back to San Antonio where they would be taken care of in BAMC's hospital and run by their ECMO program. So roughly 5 to 6 patients a year would be able to be transferred to BAMC. And what we found once we stood the program up was that there was a pool of patients that had, now that we had ECMO, we could put on a circuit earlier, that we didn't expose them to what I would describe as rather aggressive conventional ventilator management, which, because of the pressures involved, would damage the lung. So what we found was that in the course of beginning our ECMO program, we realized that although the threshold might have been high to transfer a patient to BAMC, it didn't need to be nearly that high if we could provide that service in our hospital in El Paso. And that's what we've done. Our program was reviewed by one of the well-known ECMO specialists in the country attending, who used to run Albuquerque's program, and I think his description on a podcast was that we are aggressive but appropriately so. Patients Patients do better if we recognize the need and do things that can be done to those patients as interventions, like proning the patient, like doing other things that we can do that don't require them to be on an ECMO, because they haven't reached that point. I mean, we have guidance, we have checklists, we have things that we look for that tell us that patient would be better served on an ECMO circuit than on conventional ventilation. So, and those are well established. So, but we are able to put those patients on a circuit early, and that probably accounts for our 4 to 5 day, at least on the VV side, our 4 to 5 day run times.
So Dr. Lassie, I have a couple of questions for you, because I don't want to miss the fact that you are UMC Pediatric and Associate Adult Trauma Medical Director. So all ages. And let's talk about, has there been a pediatric patient that has used ECMO, and can you describe that? And their tissues are a lot more delicate, et cetera, because you're saying aggressive, but appropriately so. Describe a time and what the reason was to have a pediatric patient on ECMO.
We've lost a lot of sleep about this topic. We're an adult trauma center that treats children, and we go to all ages. And we do that very well, and we've done that for many years very well. Our ECMO program is adult-centered. However, some of our cannulas could go down to someone as young as 15 years old and or 40 kilo. So
and or 40 kilos. So it really depends on the weight and the size of the body, so to speak.
40 to 60. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're looking at the weight of the patient, the age of the patient, the size of their vessels, and there are some that we can help. So we have had pediatric patients that were large enough to come over to our adult surgical ICU and be cannulated there and managed there, that we have put on ECMO. But that's not our goal. We're an adult ECMO program, but we're not going to miss an opportunity to help anyone in the community that we can. Meanwhile, while our partners at El Paso Children's Hospital work toward their goals in their neonatal and pediatric ICUs as they see fit.
Okay. And is there a machine, so to speak, or, and I'm just trying to call it an ECMO that's not an ECMO, that can be used on lower than 40 pounds of a person, and describe what that is and maybe compare that to ECMO, since that's something that we're hearing about for the first time?
Ivan would know as much or better than me
Okay,
about that.
Ivan.
But
Yes.
the machines are pretty much the same.
Okay.
It's the size of the cannulas that differ. And it's the size of the cannulas that differ, and the equipment that's used that is different to put in those guard
So I know we
hoses.
talked about it earlier, but this is an hour-long show. Describe again a cannula. I know we said at the very beginning, but again, describe that. And especially in this question, it's the size of the cannula that is different in one machine versus the other.
Yep. So if you can imagine, sometimes women's vessels are smaller than men's, and sometimes, well, most of the time, children's vessels are smaller than adults. And we often will look on the ultrasound and we can see, is it the size of the thumb? Is it the size of our cannula that we have? Or is it too small for the equipment that we keep and the competencies that we carry? Because it's an entire village of people we talked about. It's critical care nurses, it's respiratory therapists,
Right.
it's ECMO specialists, it's pulmonologists that predominantly take care of adults that have a lot of knowledge of the heart on our team. And then our surgeons, who are adult trauma surgeons, that may be very comfortable with a child in a trauma scenario, but not so comfortable with some of these other cannulation procedures in an itty-bitty child. And that's more the realm of the neonatal and pediatric ICU doctors to work on those younger ones.
Okay.
So.
And so, Ivan, take it from there on your end, because you are familiar with both, as Dr. Lasky said, working with both machines. When you said they're exactly the same, talk about some times when you've used one machine versus the other, depending on the size of the individual.
So the machine itself, which is the non-disposable portion of the system, is exactly the same. What changes can be the size of the oxygenator, the size of the pump used, and the tubing used to connect to the cannulas, as well as the cannulas themselves. It's never the goal to insert a cannula that takes up the entire space of a vessel. And so when you're dealing with smaller vessels, you definitely have to deal with smaller cannulas. And some of them are extremely tiny, maybe even smaller than the size of a normal pen, where we're used to, like Dr. Lasky said, garden hoses for our adults. The flow rates that are going through the system are also different. So for an adult, you can safely get up to 6.5 to 7 liters per minute of blood flow on one of our systems. In pediatrics, especially when you're dealing with infants, neonates, sometimes your flow rates are as low as maybe 200 milliliters, per minute, or even lower than that.
So we've hit the point. This is one of those things that's brand new to me. So I'm asking a lot of just not personal questions, but questions that are educating me. But we've got a whopping 9 minutes left in the program. So I want to turn things over to you all. Stop questions from me, but talk about what you see in the next 10 years. What's ECMO going to look like 10 years from now? And I'd like for you, Dr. Lasky, to talk about that also on the pediatric side, what you see, the ability of happening for individuals that are weighted, that just literally have smaller bodies. And I don't know who wants to go first. Dr. Mercer, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think it's going to be relatively difficult to predict where the technology is going to go. I mean, we're starting to see it, miniaturization of devices, pumps, miniaturization, and more efficient oxygenators that don't require necessarily patients to be in the ICU. I'm not sure we're ever going to get to a point where, well, we may, but it will be long after I'm not doing ECMO that we have the ability to do this in environments other than the ICU. Where I see the big strides in ECMO in this community, in this region, is our outreach and this ability that we have to go to the patient at another hospital. And we've done that.
Taking the machine with you to another hospital?
With us to another hospital and put the patient on an ECMO circuit. who was an extremist, cannulated them and brought them back to UMC. And ultimately, in a rather ironic circumstance, we sent that patient back to BFC because he was an active duty military troop rather. So
Now, terrible to ask, but it's the obvious question. Is that person okay now?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's terrible if it was going to be a no.
No.
Okay.
But I think system changes and expanding our program, that's part of our strategy. To that end, we have a large vehicle that's custom configured for us to take all of our equipment and 2 pumps and multiple circuits and all of our staff to anywhere as far out as about probably 45 miles, cannulate, and then transport back to UMC.
And the pump is working in transit
Exactly.
in the vehicle.
Rather than putting them in an ambulance with really bad-looking blood gases and the inability to oxygenate those people and hope for the best and hope they get here. So that is a system improvement that we're going to see. And I think that as we develop more technology, better technology, staying updated with the latest in oxygenators and pumps, and coatings and polymers that we use for our cannulas, this is kind of where this is going to go.
See, part of me almost wants to ask the questions like, who's the shopper that looks for the machines? And you mentioned earlier, and I don't want to bring it up because we don't have enough time, but this is America, United States, but there are semblances of this in other parts of the world as well, depending on how that's going. That's a whole nother show, but I'm very curious about it, and I'm going to look a lot of that up when I leave, unless we can put that in for a couple of seconds. So, Ivan, talk to me, because you've been around this for a long time. Maybe what you foresee, but also what you wish could happen with an ECMO. So in my head, you were saying, Dr. Mercer, that to take this idea out of the ICU may not happen in your lifetime. I think you're a lot younger than you think you are. In my head, I'm thinking, could this be something that can, be cost-wise too? We have 2 or 3 of them in a hospital, or maybe 2 or 3 of them in the city. We start there, right? And then going forward, is that something that you see going forward in the future?
Well, we have 5.
Oh, you have 5.
We always have a backup.
Okay. All right. Well, way to bury the lead. Okay, I'm thinking there's this one machine. Okay, now taken to the fact that you have 5, now looking at that, just more reach and frequency, so to speak.
So I think with time will come not only the ability to grow the program internally, but also to offer outreach education to other facilities, other physicians, so they can know when it's appropriate to call us for referral to put a patient on ECMO. And we're actively working on that now, but just it's going to get better, and we're going to put more resources into that. With the ECMO transport vehicle that we're looking to purchase, the ability to not have to depend on the infrastructure that's set around EMS right now in El Paso, and be able to take off and cannulate a patient and bring them back safely. But you mentioned how maybe eventually one day we'll start to see ECMO outside of the ICU, and there are ECMO-like devices that can remove CO2 that don't require to have a specialist sitting in front of them. And I think that's going to be something that we may eventually see for patients that may not quite need ECMO, but might need some CO2 removal.
Okay.
ECMO Light.
Yeah.
ECMO Light, I like that.
I think all
Dr.
sorts
Lasky,
of things that we do now, like supporting the heart, supporting the lungs, will expand to other organs as time goes on. I think we'll do more procedures under these oxygenated settings that we're able to create with the ECMO cannulas. And correct me if I'm wrong, ECMO started in neonates, right? And children.
Oh, really?
And expanded to adults, which is interesting because a lot of critical care started in adults and went to kids.
Yeah, truth be known, ECMO started with trauma. There was a motorcyclist that had a bad pulmonary contusion and got put on a circuit and survived. Now,
Dr. Bartlett, right?
The
And this is the guy in the 1970s?
The early,
Okay.
the early successes were in neonates, and their results are quite good. I would be remiss if I didn't say that our results in this program are actually quite good compared to the actual average. We participate in a registry called the Also Live
And why
Registry.
do you think that is? I always like the why to the what's.
Because I think we have set up a good program. I think we've trained our staff. We've created policy frameworks that help us manage those patients. And I think the fact that we have ECMO readily available 24/7, 365 means that a patient can go on a circuit when they need to go on a circuit, not when somebody runs something up to DC and we get permission and an aircraft. The availability of which depends on who in the world we pissed off. So our results compared to the Also Live Registry for VB, theirs is about 60% of their patients survive to discharge. Ours is currently 84%.
Well, there's a lot to be said. I love that you said that you have 5 units here. And when you're talking about cross-training, which is fantastic, and also looking at how the teams work together. So thank you so much for doing that. Ivan, keep up the good fight. I love that you did this 8 months. We had 12 months to do it. Dr. Lasky, I hope to hear a little bit more about how little bodies can, when you said this is neonatal, there's just that funny in-between population that's missing right now. But again, this program has been called First ECMO Program in the Region, the team behind UMC's Advanced Life Support System. And again, ECMO, because when I had to look it up 3 or 4 different times, because it's also not easy to pronounce. It's the extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. Again, it works kind of as an artificial lung and an artificial heart at the same time. So I want to say thanks so much for you all being here. Again, this program is underwritten by University Medical Center, but also truly the ECMO program is in partnership with the Texas Tech Health, El Paso, as well as the University Medical Center. And if this is a program that you are interested in and just found this last minute, you can go back online and look at this at 3 different places. You can go to pbselpaso.org. You can also go to the El Paso County Medical Society website, and that is epcms.com. And then also youtube.com. And again, just put in there the El Paso Physician. And usually the latest show that was aired on PBS El Paso pops up. But if you're interested in this, again, the title of this program is First ECMO Program in the Region, ECMO. Thanks for joining us. This has been the El Paso Physician. I'm Kathrin Berg.
The El Paso County Medical Society is a nonprofit organization established in 1898 that unites physicians to elevate the health of the El Paso community. We have been bringing the El Paso Physician television program to your home for the last 27 years on PBS El Paso. If you should have any medical questions relating to this program, you may email us at epmedsoc@aol.com, and we will try to have our experts answer your questions.